Welcome to another session of Business Life Lessons. Today we're going to be talking about markup versus margin and how margin affects your production, how it affects how hard you have to work. So if we're looking at the screen here, the first part that we're going to be looking at is markup versus margin. I have a bunch of numbers here already set up. One row is for markup, another row is for margin, and then I have some numbers across the top that I'm going over right now. So if we look at 30% and we want to mark up something by 30%, let's say the thing that we want to mark up would be worth $100. Let's say we have a product that costs us $100 and we are looking to mark it up so that we can make some kind of a profit on it, right? So if you mark it up, you basically take $100, multiply it by 1 plus 30%. So you're marking it up by 30%. And you end up with a product that's going to be sold at $130. And then if you look further to see, okay, how much gross profit did I actually make? Well, if the product cost you $100 and you sold it for $130, you made a gross profit of $30. But what is the gross profit margin of that profit? Well, you take the $30 that you made and divide it into the $130 that you sold, and you end up with roughly about 23% gross profit margin. So by marking something up by 30%, you end up with about 23% gross profit margin. Now, what if you said, well, I want to get a profit margin of 30%? What would be the formula and how would you determine that? Well, same thing. We're starting with something that costs us $100. But in this case, what we will do is we'll take that $100 and divide it by 1 minus the 30%. So we're going to be dividing it by 70%, which will give us $142.86 for the sale price. And if we sell it at that amount, we will have a gross profit of $42.86. And again, if we divide that into the sale price, we end up with 30% for gross profit margin. So what I've seen is a lot of new business owners or new salespeople or whoever deals with profitability of products or projects, they want to make, let's say, a gross profit margin of 30%, but they confuse it with markup. So they will mark it up by 30%, assuming that they will end up with 30% gross profit margin, but that's not the case. So this is a little tip for you for that section. Now, let's move into the margin. So how does the different margin affect you? If you're a salesperson, let's say you're a salesperson and your commission, or at least a portion of your commission, is derived from the gross profit of whatever project or product that you're selling. So let's say whatever product or project, we'll call it a widget, is sold at $10,000. And you want to get to an annual commission, or at least part of that commission, to be $50,000. And let's say your split from the gross profit part is 15%, and your closing rate is 30%. So now let's look at the different gross profit margin of that widget or that product or that service that you're selling. If that widget is sold at 10% gross profit margin, you would have to sell over 3 million in order to make $50,000. That means you would have to sell over 300 deals. You have to run, if you're closing at 30%, you would have to run over 1,000 appointments, which equates to over 4 appointments per day, assuming you're working only 5 days a week, which if each appointment takes you between running the appointment, preparing for it, after the appointment, following up, putting paperwork together, whatever you have to do, if it takes 4 hours per appointment for you to do that, that means you would have to work 17 hours per day to make the $50,000 at the 10% gross profit margin. Well, if you increase the gross profit margin, and let's say we're not adjusting anything other than the percentage of the gross profit margin. So again, if everything else stays the same, but the product or widget or service that you deliver, you're actually making 30% gross profit margin on it. In that case, you would only have to make over 1 million in sales, which ends up being over 100 deals. And at 30% closing rate, you only have to run close to 400, 370 appointments, which equates to about 1.4 appointments per day, which ends up being you would have to work 5.7 hours per day. And then if we go even further, if the gross profit margin of what you're selling is 45%, then you only have to sell 740,000 or 74 deals, which means you would only have to run 247 appointments, which means that you would only have to work barely an hour per appointment. Sorry, you would have to work barely one appointment per day, which equates to about almost 4 hours per day. So look at the comparison. If it's at 30% gross profit margin, then you would work 300% less than if whatever you're selling is at 10% gross profit margin. And if it's at 45%, you would work 450% less than the 10% or 150% less than the 30% gross profit margin. So I encourage you to work hard, but also to work smart. If it's possible to increase the gross profit margin for whatever product, service, whatever you're doing, then it makes more sense. If you're adding so much more value to whoever you're selling the product or service to, then it makes sense to make a little bit more of a profit on it. And that helps you to work a little bit less and still get the same or even get more results from that. So just a quick margin versus markup and how margin helps you out if you increase it. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks.